So, in 2026, the world of sports is about to see something, well, something we've never seen before. The FIFA World Cup isn't just returning. It's expanding to a scale that is absolutely massive, setting the stage for what people are calling the biggest single sporting event in history. Let's dig into what that actually means.
I mean, for the first time ever, we're jumping from 32 teams all the way up to 48. And it's not being hosted by just one country, but three: Canada, the United States, and Mexico. The whole tournament is spanning an entire continent. The number of people who will be on the move is just staggering, with estimates as high as 6 million fans traveling for the game.
And look, bigger always sounds better, right? But it makes you wonder, when you stretch an event across three enormous countries with a record number of teams and fans, what are the hidden costs? What is the real price we pay for a spectacle this huge?
Okay, so let's start with the people who make this whole thing possible, the fans. For so many, following their team is like a sacred journey. But in 2026, that journey could turn into a logistical nightmare that's as much of an endurance test for them as it is for the players on the field.
Now, to be fair, FIFA saw this coming. Their president, Gianni Infantino, actually promised a solution. He said they'd create geographical clusters so teams and their fans wouldn't have to travel too much, especially in that critical group stage. The idea was to keep things local and manageable.
It sounds great in theory, right? A noble goal, for sure. But then, the actual match schedule dropped. And for some fans, the picture that emerged looked very, very different. So did that travel-friendly plan actually pan out? Well, not for everybody. An analysis that popped up on Reddit broke down the travel for all 12 groups, and the difference is just wild. If your team gets drawn into Group I, you've hit the jackpot. You're looking at just over 1,100 miles of travel in a really compact, easy-to-get-around region. But if you get Group J, you are in for what one analyst perfectly called coast-to-coast chaos.
And what does that chaos actually look like? Well, it looks like 6,424 miles. Let that number sink in. Fans in that group will have to cross almost the entire United States just to watch 3 games.
Yep, you heard that right. That means, just based on the pure luck of the draw, one fan's journey could be 5.5 times longer than another's. So much for those clusters, huh? It basically creates 2 completely different fan experiences right from the get-go.
But travel miles are one thing. What about cold, hard cash? This is where it gets really counterintuitive. An analysis from Doc Sports looked at who's getting the worst value, and you'd think it would be fans flying in from Europe or South America, right? Nope. It's the fans from the host nations themselves who are going to pay the most.
Get this. American fans are looking at the highest bill of anyone. We're talking a bare minimum of over $3,000, and that's just to follow their team through the 3 group stage matches.
And this chart shows you exactly why. You'd think all that flying around would be the big ticket item, wouldn't you? Wrong. Not even close. Intercity travel, that's only about 11% of the cost. The vast majority, almost 90%, is getting eaten up by insane hotel prices and jacked up ticket costs in the host cities. It proves that where you play is way more expensive than how far you have to travel to get there.
Okay, so the cost for fans is huge. But the price of this tournament goes way beyond just dollars and cents. We have to talk about the environmental cost, because all that travel for teams, staff, and millions of fans comes with a really heavy price tag for the planet.
A report from Scientists for Global Responsibility dropped a bombshell of a number. They're projecting the 2026 World Cup will generate over 9 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. That would make it the most polluting World Cup in history, by a long shot.
It's hard to even picture what 9 million tons of CO2 looks like, right? Well, think of it this way. It's the same carbon footprint as putting nearly 6.5 million extra cars on the road and just letting them run for an entire year. The scale of the impact is just mind-boggling.
And you might hope this is just a one-time thing, a fluke because of the 3-country setup, but nope. The data shows this is a really worrying trend. The upcoming tournaments in 2030 and 2034 are also projected to have gigantic carbon footprints. It tells us that as these mega events get bigger, their environmental bill is getting bigger right along with.
So we've talked about the fans, we've talked about the planet, but what about the stars of the show, the players themselves? The unique setup of the 2026 World Cup is creating what many are calling the most physically brutal and demanding tournament ever played.
Players are basically walking into a triple threat of physical challenges.
First up, you've got high-altitude games in places like Mexico City, where there's only about 77% of the oxygen you'd find at sea level. Then, you've got the brutal summer heat and humidity in southern U.S. cities. And on top of all that, there's the constant travel across 4 different time zones, which just messes with your sleep, recovery, everything.
And this isn't just speculation. The Global Players Union, FIFPro, is already ringing the alarm bells. They've officially flagged 6 of the host venues as posing an extremely high risk for heat stress injuries. Playing top-tier soccer in these conditions is just pushing the human body to its absolute breaking point.
Okay, so your brain probably goes right here. All this travel, all this heat, it has to mean tired players and worse games, right? It just makes sense. But what if it's not that simple? Some pretty surprising research suggests we might be looking at the wrong thing. So there was this really cool study on NBA players, guys who are constantly flying across the country, and it found something wild. Things you'd expect to matter, like how far they flew or how many time zones they crossed, actually had no significant impact on who won the game. So what did matter? It all came down to how packed the schedule was, like playing 3 games in 4 days, and whether one team got more rest than the other. So it's not always the travel itself, it's the recovery time that's the real game changer.
All right, so let's zoom out for a second. When you put all this together, the insane logistics for fans, the record-breaking pollution, the extreme physical toll on the players, you have to start asking some pretty big questions about where all of this is going.
The 2026 World Cup is really the perfect case study. The dream of making it the biggest ever is huge. It's exciting, but it comes with a massive trade-off. Record-breaking problems for pretty much everyone involved. The fans in the seats, the players on the field, and the planet itself.
And that really leaves us with one final big question. We love these mega events because they bring the world together. But as they just keep getting bigger and more complex, are we getting close to a breaking point? A point where the costs, whether they're financial, physical, or environmental, just start to outweigh the celebration? You have to wonder, are we pushing this whole model right to the edge?